Hey guys, today I want to talk about the top 5 questions artists ask. Now, there's going to be a lot of questions that you might have being a new beginner artist or maybe even advanced artist. And there are a lot of different questions that you might ask depending on the genre of art that you do. Starting with the first question, what art curriculum did I study? So my art curriculum was centered mostly on a broad spectrum of the art fundamentals like perspective, values, color theory, and lighting. I also eventually added composition, shape language, character design, and design theory. I studied all these areas because I kind of wanted to future-proof myself just in case I changed the direction of art that I wanted to go, which is eventually what I did. Like I can apply those art fundamentals in any genre that I choose. That isn't to say that I don't have weaknesses. I don't know a thing about creating environments, architecture, any type of set design or level design. I don't know anything about car design, very little. I know very little about animal anatomy. This is just all these little things that, depending on what area of art you're going to go to, you're probably going to need to know some of those things. And a lot of things that I've listed, most of that stuff, not all of it, has to do with concept art. The second question that I've gotten a lot is it possible to become self-disciplined to learn art at home? This is just my opinion, but I don't think there's much argument against it. The short answer is yes. So many artists learn their craft at home, from tattoo artists to painters, sculptors, and 3D artists. It's about whether or not you're self-disciplined and a self-starter. Can you make yourself study every day? Can you draw every day? Or do you feel more comfortable having a community of your, artists and, peers and friends around you at all times? Maybe to shoot off ideas or concepts with, or to share your art and to maybe get a few critiques off of them. And I hate to say it, but a lot of the times it is also to, I hate to say it, but a lot of times it's if you're just one of those people that are in need of constant validation and critique, or do you prefer to figure it out and go it alone, and every now and then just ask someone who isn't very biased about their critique to critique your work, and to maybe ask them, what do you think you need work on and whatnot, because critique is very important. You have to really know yourself if you're going to learn art at home, and if you're going to learn art fundamentals at home. You have to really know what kind of learning you're going to be facing, and just be prepared for it. It's certainly possible to learn it all at home, but it's just figuring out what type of learner you are. If you are, again, a self-starter, or if you prefer to follow someone else's curriculum. Sometimes you may just not trust yourself with that type of pressure, that type of education, you know what I mean? And again, but it is perfectly possible to be self-taught. The third question is, do I have enough time? This was a question when I first started. That's a question that I was asking myself. You always think, oh, that person's 35, or that person's 40, or that person's 28. Like, oh gosh, they might as well give it all up. You know what I mean? Pack it all in. Go do that retail job, or go into some other field. It's just not like that. I mean, if you're going to be focusing on only one or two genres of art, and this is just my opinion, if you work hard at it, you can knock all that out within 2-3 years. You know what I mean? If you're not focusing on painting, if you're not focusing on so many different styles of art, if you're just focusing on one thing or jumping into one different genre, or whatever that may be, you can become really, really good within 3 years. We're talking about from study to actually doing it, you know what I mean, and doing it pretty well, and actually someone thinking about hiring you. I would say, again, but you will have to be studying and doing it for 2, 3, 4 hours a day for 3 years. But again, I think you can get from where you're at sitting right now to, I wouldn't say master level, but a very advanced artist in 3 years. But you really got to put the work in. You can't just be nonchalant about it. And so that's why I say, like, if you still have your hands and you're not bedridden, then yes, you still have time. All people care about is, can you do the job? If you're younger and you can't do the job as good as someone older, guess what? No, you're not going to get the job. You're not going to win over against that older person because you're younger. It just doesn't work that way. It's all about if you're apt at doing that job, if you're apt at that skill. That's what brings value to any creative team. Or again, or if it's just you on your own, you're going to bring value. What matters is your work, not your age. The one thing relevant artists do is keep up with trends and technology to a point. An older artist cannot be stagnant with their knowledge about ways artists are using technology in the industry in the modern times. You are only as valuable as what you bring to the table. Another question you get a lot is, what art books do I recommend? I wouldn't recommend these books if they didn't help me improve my art. The first book I want to recommend is How to Render by Scott Robertson and Thomas Berling. I've recommended this book many times. I'll continue to keep recommending it because I think it's a very necessary and critical book for artists who are trying to master their fundamentals. And a lot of your fundamentals are going to have to do with perspective and how light works in light direction and shadow direction. The How to Render book talks everything about that and about how light is affected by different materials and time of day, how those materials are curved, how light is affected by the curves of certain materials and surfaces. It just goes about the nitty-gritty of how color and light works, and I think it's a great book on perspective and color and light. The second book is also by Scott Robertson and Thomas Berling. It is How to Draw. This book is I always say it's like the Bible of drawing books, or basically on how to draw with perspective. And let me tell you, it is one of the only books that I've wanted to cry after reading. I almost gave it up twice, but I kept it at it. It is a very tough book. It's very hard to understand if you do not understand the concepts. You really do have to take your time reading this book. The How to Draw book is really tough, but once you finish it, you might have to finish it a couple times. I've read it 2 or 3 times, and I really understood it at the end, and it really got my perspective to be so much better. I really think it's one of the most dense book of perspective that I've read so far, and I've read about 4 or 5 perspective books. The third book is Color and Light by James Gurney. This book teaches you that you know nothing about color and light. You think you know how color and light works until you read the Color and Light book. He's really good at showing you examples that you may have not seen in your life. You're like, how does that make sense? So he does his best to make sense of it. He really explains it in great detail. I highly recommend Color and Light. Buy that book as soon as you can. It's going to help you understand your surroundings and your environment when it comes to color and light. So the next book is Creative Illustration by Andrew Loomis. Creative Illustration is just one of those books that I think is totally necessary if you're trying to get better at your composition and what makes a good image. It's really mostly about composition and coming up with creative ways to frame your images and frame your drawings. You ever find that moment where you're trying to draw something but you don't really know how to finish it? You don't really know how to find creative ways of how to see images and how to kind of dance around the image and just make it look better as a whole. You just find it's seeming a little empty. Well, this is the book that you're going to want to buy. You're going to want to read in order to better understand what makes a good image and how we see images as a whole. I think it's a necessary book for anyone who's struggling with their composition and just struggling to finish a piece, to feel confident about that. It's a great book, Creative Illustration. Pick that up. The next book is also by Andrew Loomis. This is another book I really love. This you should actually finish before Creative Illustration. It's called Figure for All It's Worth, and this is he goes down really simplistic. I think Andrew Loomis he has the most simplistic take on anatomy, on human anatomy. He really breaks it down in the simplest way, and he doesn't exaggerate it too much. He just feeds you in the most basic ways. That's what I love about Andrew Loomis, is he has a great way of breaking down human anatomy, and it's not really taxing, because perspective and anatomy can really be intimidating when it's just thrown at you in certain ways. He teaches it in a way where it's graspable. So I think Figure for All It's Worth is a good entry point into studying anatomy and studying, like, basic perspective when it comes to anatomy. Go ahead and pick that book up. I think it's just that's something that's really going to round out your anatomy fundamentals. All right, guys, well, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other ideas, let me know, and I'll see you guys next time.